Okay, we'll go ahead and begin. Welcome to this week's community show. My name is Sarah Brahms Miller. I am the community program manager, and Rob Agarwal, our senior product manager, will be presenting on Reltio reverse geocoding. Rob, would you mind going to the next slide, please? Thank you. As a reminder, these sessions are recorded. They are posted to community. Please keep yourselves on mute. For questions, you can use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. But again, please keep yourselves on mute during the presentation until the Q&A begins. And you can ask questions in the chat, and we will visit those when the Q&A portion begins. And if we don't get your questions, we will send a follow-up email with responses to those questions as well. Just for our safe harbor purposes, please take a quick glance at the safe harbor slide before we begin, and then I will pass it over to Saurabh.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Saurabh, and I'm a senior product manager at Reltio. I look after multiple areas of the product. One of the areas that I manage is cleanse. Address cleansing is like one of the most widely used features on Reltio, and we keep doing improvements on the feature. In the previous release, we released reverse geocoding, and today I'll be talking about reverse geocoding, what the feature is, what are some use cases, the types of implementation that we've done for reverse geocoding, and how to configure it, and then a quick demo of the feature. All right. So first to talk about reverse geocoding in basic layman terms, reverse geocoding is the process of getting an address from the geocodes, from your latitude, longitude. You are able to get a fully formatted address mail deliverable. That is what reverse geocoding is. So to think of it or to think of some real life examples is, for example, if you're standing on a roadside and you want to book a cab, you open your Uber app, and then what you'd see on Uber app is it will be able to track your location, and it would not just give you the latitude, longitude. It won't give you the latitude, longitude, but it will give you the exact address where you're looking at, or maybe a nearby address where you are uh, currently position, so that it can the cab driver can know your location and it can travel to that location, right? So this is like one of the most common use cases that we see in our everyday lives. And from the business's perspective, knowing the complete address is a lot of it provides a lot of benefit to the businesses. So there could be a whole segment of users that or customers that have interacted with the businesses, but they somehow our company or a business do not have the complete address for those customers. So in this scenario, the businesses are not able to interact with the customers. They're not able to send them the marketing content or service those customers at all. So in these scenarios, it becomes really important for those companies or businesses to have the complete address location so they can provide equivalent and good service to other customers. Some other common use cases could be, think of a rental company which has properties all across the country, but there are certain properties for which it is not able to get an address, or it does not know the exact address, but it knows that this is the area where it is located. Through some sources, it is able to get the latitude, longitude. Or you're a transportation company which has uh, transport station vehicles, trucks, and all running across the country, and you want to know exactly where the truck is right now. So latitude, longitude, maybe the GPS device will give you the latitude, longitude, but to translate those latitudes and longitudes into a proper address is what the companies are looking for. So in these kind of scenarios, the ability to reverse geocode latitude, longitude into a proper address becomes really important. And with this in mind, keeping the needs of the customers, especially some of the customers which are into transportation and even in the healthcare, there are certain use cases. But keeping this all of this requirements in mind, we built this feature called reverse geocoding. and currently available. It's an add-on product. So if a customer wants to use it, they'll have to license it. And once the licensing is done, then we'll enable it on your tenant. And then I'm going to show you how or how do you use it once it has been enabled in your tenant. Okay. So this is a out of the box integration. What it really means is, say for example, a customer has a lot of latitude, longitude, or they have a lot of records without proper address, but just latitude and longitude. Theoretically, they could use those geocodes, maybe call Google Address API or some other service to cleanse those or to get proper addresses from those latitude, longitudes and load that into Reltio. So that custom integration is possible. But then with out of the box, basically it avoids all of those custom integration, the custom development that you do before loading your data into Reltio. And what this integration also does is once you create a record in Reltio with the latitude and longitude, it would then fetch the address, and then it would run that address through the cleansing process. So in your tenant, if you have, say, pre-processing and verify or cache and serve or whatever process you have configured in your tenant, the this integration would first fetch the address, run it through all those verification process, and then return the final output in the same format in which an address would return a cleansed output. So there are two implementation types. One is the integrated API, and what this integrated API is basically if you enable reverse geocoding in your tenant and you do the correct configuration in your L3, then as you create location or as you create an address, when while you're creating a location, if you provide only latitude, longitude, and country, it would automatically generate the address and it would then use that address to create the entire location. Okay, so basically it's integrated within the APIs for posting an entity. Uh, so the three mandatory fields that we need to work for this reverse geocoding is latitude, longitude, and country. Apart from this, you do not need any other input fields. With only these three fields, we are able to get the whole address. And on the output side, you'll see two additional fields on the output, the reverse geo distance and reverse geo status. So what it does is, say for example, I provide a latitude, longitude as an input based on which an address is generated. Now this latitude, longitude, I'm just taking an example. It could be, somewhere not in the main city. It's not necessarily, it could be like the main gate of a house. It could be somewhere between two houses. Now in this scenario, uh, we would be able to return the distance from the latitude, longitude that the user provided versus and the distance between the latitude longitude the user provided and the actual address the API has found. Taking another example, I give an address of somewhere on the highway. Okay, so there is nothing within, say, within 50 meters of that latitude longitude. Now in this case what will happen is the platform or this reverse geocode feature will try to find the nearest address which could be beyond 50 meters. It will try to find that address and it will return that address as the matching address. In this scenario, you also need to know the distance between the input you provided and the address that is being returned. So this is captured in the reverse geo distance, and then we have another field called reverse geo status. This reverse geo status field actually tells you whether the match was an exact match, whether it was matched based on the radius. So you have the ability to configure the radius within which this search should happen. The latitude, longitude that you're providing as input, it will try to find an address within the radius that you define. So if you define a radius of 100 meters, it will try to find matching addresses within the 100 meters. So reverse geostatus tells you whether it was an exact match, whether there was no match found in the radius, or whether it was not an exact match, but it was found within the radius that is configured in the tenant. Okay, reverse geocode triggered when these three input fields are available. That is when the geocoding is triggered, and platform fetches the nearest address to the input, and it runs it through all the other cleansing processes which are configured in the tenant. Now, this is a good approach when we talk about creating an address and you have no clue as to, or if you want to, have a approximate address, you do not have an exact address in mind that you want this reverse geocode to suggest. So in this scenario, it is a good enough solution, but it comes with certain limitations. If, for example, I'm standing or I give a latitude, longitude of a mall. Now, within the mall, there are hundreds and thousands of shops. Okay. And you want to identify, or the customer wants to identify which shops use my product. Okay. So in this scenario, the reverse geocode might the nearest address on that geocode that you've provided, it might not be the same address that the customer has in their database, or it might not be the same shop that the customer has in their database. So in this scenario, what we really need is we want the customers to provide all the addresses in the vicinity. So instead of providing, or instead of automatically taking one address which is nearest, we want to give them all the addresses so that they can maybe look up in their database and identify the right shop, which should to identify the right shop where their product is being sold. Yeah, so the closest, basically, what we're trying to tell is the closest address may be the closest, but it might not be the most relevant. And with this approach, the integrated API approach, there is no option to choose any other address. By default, the platform picks the nearest address and uses it as the correct address for all the future purposes. So understanding these limitations and other different use cases which we thought might be required for our customers, we created another implementation of this, which we're calling the standalone API. This implementation, what it does is basically when you provide a latitude, longitude, and the country, and you call this API, it would return all the addresses which are within the radius which is configured. So basically, you can control how many addresses you want in the output. You can also control within what radius you want to search, but it will return multiple responses. Only the basic fields, address line 1, 2, state, country, zip, and so on. But it actually gives you enough information to choose the right address to use. So basically, think of it as an external integration or a custom integration where using RIH or some other tool, you take your latitude, longitude, yeah, you build a recipe using RIH, you call the reverse geocode API, fetch the addresses. From the addresses which are returned, you do a lookup in your local database to identify which is the right address and then populate that address. So after you've identified the right address, you can then use that address to load into Reltio. Okay, so this standalone API, it is not integrated with our post entity API. This will only give you all the possible matches, and then you have to pick the most relevant match and then post it in the entity API. Yeah, so customers can build custom logic to find the relevant addresses, and then this relevant address can be posted into Reltio so that it runs through the entire cleansing process, whatever you have configured in your tenant. All right. So configurations, basically, I'm sure most of you are aware that we have two different configurations, a business configuration and a physical configuration. This is enabled in the physical configuration, and this is a licensed product. So if a customer has bought the license for this product, our support team will enable it in your physical configuration. And once enabled in the physical configuration, then we can do changes in L3 configuration to use this API. The maximum radius that we can define for reverse geocoding is 300, and this is also the default. So by default, it will, or maximum search that the reverse geocode will do is within the 300-meter radius. And although reverse geocode is supported worldwide, so if your customer has a worldwide TENS license, they'll be able to use reverse geocode worldwide. But if the customer has a license only for US, then they'll be able to use reverse geocode also only for US. All right. So this is about enabling the feature, making sure that we have the configurations done in the physical configuration. Then comes the business configuration to ensure that it is enabled, the integrated API is enabled in your tenant. In the L3 configuration, like I was explaining earlier, that we have three input parameters which are required: the latitude, longitude, and the country. So these have to be mapped in the input. I'm sure, or I'll just show it in a bit. We have the configuration. If you look at a cleanse configuration, we generally have two configurations. Okay, the first one is when the entire address is given as address input, or the entire address is given as one address line. The second configuration is when addresses are broken into different components: address line 1, address line 2, city, state, zip, and so on. So this should be added as the third configuration, and the configuration should be designed in such a way, or the chaining should be done in such a way, that only if the first and second do not return a response, only then this is called. So basically, if if the address that is being created does not have address lines, it only has latitude, longitude, and country, only then this configuration should be called. So this is how we'll design or this is how we'll configure it in L3. All right. On the output side, as I explained earlier, we have two separate fields: reverse geo distance and reverse geo status. These two fields should be added in the output. I mean, this is an important information that you'd want to know if you're using reverse geocode, so you can identify whether this was like an exact match, or how far is it from the actual latitude, longitude that you gave. How far is the address which is fetched? So you might want to add it in the output and then map it in the cleanse output as well. All right. Now let me go to the demo quickly. Before I move on to the demo, are there any questions?
There are a number of questions in the chat, Saurabh, so
Yeah,
you can read them out to you if you'd like.
I can read them.
Okay.
What about geocoding? Is that already available? Yes, geocoding is available. It is out of the box feature if you are using address cleansing. It's a separate process, like we have enhance and verify cache and all. Similarly, we have geocoding process. You can create a ticket with Reltio support and they'll enable it in your tenant. Wise
Uh,
country, sorry.
Sorry, Saurabh, a quick question that what is the underlying API being used for geocoding and reverse geocoding, if I may ask?
Uh,
Which
so
service? Yeah. Mm.
this is our cleanse service only. So depending on the processes which are configured, or maybe I can just quickly show it to you. Right. So this is how we configure cleansing. Okay. So we have something called cleanse, and we define which are the different processes that is enabled for the tenant. E is for enhance, V is verify, G is geocoding, and RGO is reverse geocoding. So this is the same API, the cleanse API. It reads which all processes are configured for the tenant, and depending on that, it performs the operations. And for reverse geocoding, the standalone API, I'll just give a demo of it. It is also documented in our customer portal.
Right. I meant to ask which vendor is being used by you
We
as
are
an
using
external.
locate
Okay. For everything, all these
for
services.
everything. All
Oh,
address cleansing
got
related services, we are using locate.
okay. Got it. Thank you.
Um, so did we have more questions? Vice country mandatory input, latitude, longitude pair should be unique. So see, I agree. Latitude, longitude pair should is a unique combination in itself. We probably did not need country, but with country, the performance improves because the way that the data is segregated is per country. So if we have the country information, the overall performance improves by a lot. So that is why country is also mandatory, so that we can have good performance in while we are searching for the addresses. If the country is not provided, the default country which is already configured in your tenant is assumed. So if you do not provide country, we'll take the default country, which in most of the cases is US. That will be assumed, and the search will happen within that country. Does the output also contains the change coordinates after reverse geocoding? Yes, it does. So um, it will contain the coordinates of the address which is fetched. Along with that address, it will also contain the reverse geo distance and reverse geo status.
Okay.
Any plans for taking what three words input? I'm not sure I understand this. Uh, Floris, can you clarify this?
So, what three words is an application that gives you in 3 words an exact location. So, if you Google what 3 words,
Mm-hmm.
you will find it.
Okay, I'll try that.
Yep.
Honestly, I'm not aware of this, but I'll give it a try. And if it is something that is really good, yeah, then why not? We'll try to implement it in the product.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. How adaptable is the radius configuration for search? I'm sorry, can you please clarify what do you mean by adaptable?
Yeah, what I wanted to know is that depending upon the geography, I mean,
Hmm.
sometimes if I want that in UK, the as I read in your
Hmm.
presentation, it's 300 meters maximum, and I
Correct.
want to change it on the fly or make it more
Yeah.
configurable. There
Hmm.
any
So
option conditional? Mhm.
yeah, so for the integrated API, I mean the one that you are using for post entity, there it is configurable, but it is constant. I mean configurable at the tenant level, it cannot change at each API level. Okay. But for the standalone API, the radius is part of the input parameter, optional parameter in the API. So you can configure it per request.
Okay, understood. But there could be like a reference table which contains country and radius or something like that. That's like a part of the coding, right? Or no, that could not be done.
As of now, it doesn't exist. But if
Mhm.
we think that, I'll suggest that you create an idea in our ideas portal. If we see enough traction on that, if more customers are interested, then yes, we can think about implementing something like that.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I'll quickly go to the L3 configuration just to give you an idea of what the configuration will look like. Mhm. So this is my cleanse configuration. Okay. Like I was telling earlier, we have those three inputs, right? One is the case where you have the entire address as the address line one, or sorry, the entire address in one line, which is this configuration. On the input side, we only have address input as mandatory fields. The second configuration is when you have addresses broken into different address lines, address line one, two, country, state, zip, and so on. And here address line one is mandatory. This is out of the box configuration. And then this is part of the chain. So if you look at it, within this chain, I have this the address breakdown with proceed on success as false. So basically what it means is if I'm able to find the if the address line one is present as an input and the cleanser is able to call this cleanse function, then there's no need to proceed further in the chain. But if this is not true, or if for some reason this cleanse is not called, only then it proceeds to the next function in the chain. All right. So proceed on success is false, whereas proceed on failure is true. So in the third scenario, when I do not have address line one and I only have latitude, longitude, and country, which are these three fields, then based on these three fields, then this function is called with the input mapping of country, geolocation, latitude, longitude. And on the output side, I have mapped those additional two fields. So basically, I've created those two fields in my location entity and mapped it to cleanse output. Another thing that I think if you are using it in your tenant, you'll have to keep in mind is to set OV only to false in the reverse geocoding, because by default or generally out of the box configuration has OV only true. So what will happen is if OV only is true, then with this configuration, because your latitude, longitude, and country is dependent on address line 1, so these values will not get any operational value and you will not see a result. So if you're using reverse geocode, you'll have to use or specifically set OV only to false. Here is the parameter for radius filter. You can set it to say 100 or 50 or whatever radius that you want to enable. For example, if you want to have very precise location, you can even set it to 0. Only give an address when there's an exact match. Otherwise, don't give me an address. So you can control it. The maximum limit is 300, but you can instruct the platform to not return an address beyond 10 meters or whatever your requirement is. All right. All right. So with this configuration, I have it. So sorry, I'll have to log into my tenant. I didn't realize I closed the window. So what I'll do is I'll first show you the integrated API, the one that I'm using when I'm creating locations in my tenant. And once that is done, then I'll also give you a quick demo of the standalone API. And this will just take a minute. Sorry. All right. So what I'll do here is I'll try to create a location, assuming that I do not have the address lines or any other information. I just have latitude, longitude, and country. So I create a location with this country, say USA, and geolocation attributes. Or I'll take this as the so only with this three information, this is all the information that I have about the location, and I try to save it. So you see, it populated the entire address. Okay. It also ran it through verification. You can see that it is partially verified and it has more details about why it is partially verified. But it has all the other information. It has a zip code, address line 1, city, state, and so on. Right. It also tells you reverse geo status is an exact match. So basically, it found an address which was exactly matching this latitude, longitude in its reference database. Uh, Now moving on to the other standalone APIs. So now the example that I was saying earlier, it found an address. It although it was an exact match, it was partially, but it was only partially verified. So you might have the scenario where the address which it returned is not the address that you were looking for. So you need more flexibility or you need more choices to determine which is the address that you want. And in that case, you can use this API. It is documented. This reverse geo API, again, this will take latitude, longitude, and country as the input. The additional parameters, the additional parameters are maximum results, and you can also define the radius. I'll just get the parameter for radius also. Mm. So here in my input, I've given this latitude, longitude, and US. I want maximum three results within the 100-meter radius. Okay. And in the results, you'll see that I have the basic addresses, the basic parameters of the address, state, city code, zip, and then I also have this the reverse geo distance. All right. So this is 35 meters away from this latitude longitude. All right. And it is also the reverse geo status, which is a radius match. The next one in the list. So basically because I wanted three results maximum, so you see that I have three results here, three matching addresses. The first one was 35 meters. The next one is reverse geo distance 41 meters. So it is always sorted in the order of distance from the input. So the one which is nearest to the latitude longitude is on top, and then it is sorted in ascending order of distance. And then the third one is 50 meters. Okay. We also have a batch mode in this. So if you want to have like you want to send multiple input, you can also do that. Latitude, longitude, country. This is the format to do it. And again, here also you have those parameters uh, to to enforce maximum results and radius filter. And the responses are again for each of these, because I defined three maximum results. So for each of this input set, I'll receive three results within the 200-meter radius filter. Yeah, and then the next set. All right, so this was like a quick demo. I hope that made sense. Any other questions that I can help with?
There's another question that just popped up in the chat.
Uh-huh. Uh, does geocoding and reverse geocoding license have dependency on cleanse license? So cleanse license is basically all our customers, they get cleanse license for US out of the box. That is part of your contract. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Geocoding is already included in that license. So if you want geocoding enabled, you can, if you want to enable geocoding on your tenant, you can do that. You create a support ticket and the Reltio support team will help you with that.
But that is only
So
for the US addresses, right?
that out of or what is included in your base package is US, but if you want it for countries outside of US, then it's a separate license, and
Mm.
you can reach out to your CSM or whoever is your account manager,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they can help you
Mm-hmm.
with the licensing and all.
Mm-hmm.
Reverse geocode is not included in the base package. This is a separate license. So if you want to use reverse geocoding feature also, you have to procure a separate license for that.
Right. Okay. Good. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions from anyone? All right. Okay, I'll continue sharing. All right, then. So over to you, Sarah. Is there anything else that you want to discuss? The
Nope.
upcoming.
Yeah, we just have some upcoming shows, so keep an eye out. We have one, Sarab will also be leading the one on the 7th, on enhancing data discovery with Reltio and Elation. And then we also have another show coming up on the 21st of May, on Reltio Zero Copy integration to Microsoft Fabric. So keep an eye out and please go into the community events page. You can register for both of those events there. And then we should have more shows coming up or being put up onto the event page in the next coming weeks. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We hope to see you at our next two community shows.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Have
Thank
a
you.
nice day. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.